Before we actually dive into the course and start learning about how we can be more effective communicators, it's important that we actually understand what communication is. See, there are over 100 different academic definitions of communication, which kind of signals that communication scholars don't exactly agree about what is and what isn't communication. And so the goal of this video is twofold. Firstly, it's to get you thinking about what you believe the definition of communication is. And second, it's to give us a starting point, a jumping off point into the course so that we actually know what we're going to be learning about throughout the semester. So two things I want to do. I want to actually define communication, and then I want to walk through very briefly 5 different fields of communication study. So let's start by defining communication. I want to give 2 different definitions of communication. One that's somewhat prominent in communication academia, and another one that is my own personal definition of communication. So let's start with the definition that's somewhat prominent in communication academia, and that is the simultaneous creating and sharing of meaning through human symbolic interaction. A couple concepts I want to touch on there. Okay, the first is the simultaneous creating and sharing. What does simultaneous mean? Well, it just means at the same time. So it means at the same time we're both creating and sharing meaning. Right? The second concept I want to touch on is symbolic interaction. The words and actions we take to communicate are actually symbolic. What does that actually mean? Well, it means that meanings are within people. And the goal of communication is to transfer those meanings accurately to the next person. Right? And we do this using symbols, i.e. words and actions. The second definition is my own personal definition. And this was shaped by a communication professor that I had when I was in college. He said something that stuck with me. He said, intelligent people take complex things and make them simple. And this has shaped a lot of how I teach now. Right? We want to take complex things and make them simple. And the simplest definition that I can give of communication is the sending and receiving of messages. Anytime we're both sending and someone's receiving a message, communication is taking place. So let's actually dive into those 5 communication fields. Okay? The first is intrapersonal communication. The field of psychology has a lot to do with this. This is communication with yourself, okay? Meaning you are both the sender and the receiver, right? Because we need both a sender and receiver to be sending and receiving messages, right? So anytime we're thinking, we're both creating and sharing that meaning, right? So we're the sender and the receiver of that message. The second communication field is interpersonal communication. This is communication between 2 people. And this is a field that we're going to touch on a lot in this course. When we get a little bit bigger, right, we get into small group communication. This is communication between 3 to 20 people. If we go lower than 3, right, we get into 2, right, interpersonal communication, 1, intrapersonal communication. If we get larger than 20, we usually step into something called public communication. And we're going to do a little bit of this in this course, right? This is where you're generally in front of a group communicating out to an audience, right? This is a speech course, SPC 101, and so we are going to refine and work on and build our public speaking skills. Okay, the last communication field I want to touch on is mass communication, and this is when we communicate out to hundreds or thousands or even millions of people. And this is usually done via a PR team through some sort of social media site. So that's a brief overview of what communication actually is and the fields of communication. In the next video, we'll actually dive into 3 communication models and talk about the components of communication.